Do you think that Jimmy Tallarico really has a chance to win the race for the United States Senate in the state of Texas?
So, look, unfortunately, I do think he has a chance. I think this is a real race. I think it's going to be close. I think we're going to win. I think we're going to keep Texas red. But the polling right now shows this as a 1 or 2 point race.
Republican Senator Ted Cruz of Texas with that warning for his party about his home state's closely watched Senate race. Those comments coming on the Sean Hannity Show on Wednesday, speaking with guest host Texas Governor Greg Abbott. So, David Drucker, let's get your thoughts here on that race. You know, the Trump weighed in. Paxton becomes a Republican nominee. He has plenty of baggage. But Republicans have been on onslaught against Tallarico in recent weeks. Polls show, though, it's real close.
Look, this is a very good Democratic environment, right? Voters are unhappy with Washington. They're unhappy with the president. And Texas, though very red, is not as blanket red as you might think when you look at a lot of the suburban metropolitan areas. And you look at the fact that you have a very well-funded Democratic nominee in James Tallarico, who's very good at politicking and very good at parrying a lot of the attacks coming his way. And, you know, what we saw in 2018, which is, I think, the best way to sort of compare this, is that even in a state that had not elected a Democrat statewide in many years, and that streak has continued, Beto O'Rourke came within under 3 points of defeating Senator Ted Cruz. Voters were unhappy with Washington. They were unhappy with Trump. They were not satisfied with Cruz as their nominee at that time because Republicans were particularly down on him coming out of that 2016 convention. And here you have, again, a Republican nominee that people are not thrilled with. He's got a lot of baggage. He is beatable. I would still say this is Ken Paxton's race to lose, but it is tight, and he can lose.
So, Lauren, Democrats have said, well, at minimum, because this race is going to be close, Republicans are going to be forced to spend a lot of money in Texas, money they could use elsewhere. But there are others in the party who feel like, yeah, Texas has been our white whale, but they feel like this is a shot. They do have a chance to get it.
Yeah, well, because Paxton is such a weak and complicated candidate, but it's a tough field. I mean, this is like Democrats' dream to get back Texas. It's been a long shot for a long time. I agree with David. Tallarico is probably the best shot we have. He's running an amazing race, and if he keeps with it, you know, it may be that he can really pull it out. And the turnout issue is going to be the factor. It's different in a midterm year than it is in a presidential. But if those cities, the Houston, Dallas, Austin suburbs really get going, it's possible.
All right, we'll be watching it. Lauren Leader and David Drucker, thanks you both. Reverend Al, stay with us.